well, in June 2020, David had a stroke during the night. It was a Sunday evening, and he'd not been feeling well for 2 or 3 days. And I kept checking during the night if he was all right, but I just thought he was asleep, but I realised in the morning. So I rang 999 and the ambulance came out fairly quickly. When we got to the hospital, they took David down somewhere to deal with him, and I waited not very long, and a doctor came out and spoke to me and explained what they'd had an acute stroke and what they were going to do. And I said, can I go and see him? And they said, no, we're sorry, which I understand. So I came home then. She did give me a contact number to ring so that I could ring up to see how he was, more or less get a readout of his medical notes. So I couldn't see him for 3 weeks, but I could ring. And I used to ring first thing in the morning and at night, and I would get through to this team of mainly girls who would read his medical notes or the ward notes. And the speech therapist wanted to talk to me about what she could do to get his speech improving. And I said, well, I'm sure he would like to talk to me. By then he'd come round. And so somehow she managed to wangle it that I could go and visit in full kit. And you had to make an appointment, which fair enough. And the reception staff were lovely, because I was quite nervous. And then so she organised that. And by then you were a bit more with it, weren't you? Yeah. I don't think you were sitting up in bed, but so then she arranged, because I didn't know, but speech therapists are connected to swallowing. I didn't know that was part of their remit. And she actually was a student, and she was just sort of getting to the end of her training. So she did a sort of case study on him. And she said, well, if I can arrange for you to come in at lunchtime, you can help him with swallowing this disgusting sloppy food, and any liquid had to be thickened. So that was wonderful. So I went most days, but they did let family go as well. So that put their mind at rest. Any emails that, photographs that were sent in, I don't know what they did at BRI, but they got them and put a plastic cover on them, and they were hung on a rail so David could look at pictures of his grandchildren and whatever, and we could talk about it. When it came round to them wanting to get him out of bed, and the physios were working with him, they would tell me what time they were likely to get round to David, and they let me go into the gym place with them to show me what they were doing, which was so kind. And they also showed both my sons, which reassured them that there was a chance that David was going to get a bit better. And he couldn't even sit unaided at that point. And they worked on him. And they were always very kind at reporting back. And I have to say that the doctor on the ward would come and talk to me. The sister on the ward would come and talk to me. Ward 6, I would recommend it to anybody. Yeah, the physios worked with him. The occupational therapists worked with him and showed me what I could do. The main problem was he had all this lymphatic fluid in his legs and arms, which had to be kind of massaged away. So she showed me how to do that as well. And then, so that continued, didn't it, till he got on permanent food, harder food. I wouldn't say the food was marvellous, but it was edible. And I think you mainly got what you wanted, didn't you?
Yeah.
Then the occupational therapist had organised a hospital bed, which was in that room at the back. And the bed came, but there was nothing said about David being discharged. So I asked and eventually found out that it was coming home the next day. And he came home in a wheelchair in a taxi. And the poor taxi man, it's a good job my daughter and son-in-law were at our house. They practically had to carry David inside. Bearing in mind, none of us knew how to get him into a bed. We didn't even know what this slide sheet was. Anyhow, they got him into bed, and some kind of social workers came that night. It was very late at night. It was about 8 or 9 o'clock. And they sort of filled us in on what would happen, and that carers would come in the morning. And I think they're the national health carers that you get for 6 weeks. And they were mature ladies who were very good and used to dealing with this. And the physios actually came the next day. So he only came home at 9 o'clock at the night, and the physios came the very next day and got the hoist working. And they did a lot of work getting rid of this fluid and showed me. And from there on, they had targets, which they explained to David and explained for me for what they were going to do. So they came every weekday for 6 weeks. They actually came at 8:30 one morning to show the carers how to help David to try to wash himself. And then they showed us how that David could sit up and swing his legs round. And by then he was still on the hoist. But then they said, well, they thought he could manage an ETAC, which is like a stand that they pull up. So we kept the hoist just in case it didn't work, and the ETAC came. And they came to show the carers. By then we were on the premier company of carers, but they came, and we had one particular girl who was really interested, and they came very early in the morning to show her, and they had to work in twos on this ETAC to show her how to do it. All the time they were coming, they were involving other people, like my son-in-law, when David could eventually try to get into the car. They showed him how to get David in. They involved me all the time. And one really good piece of advice was for me to take a step back and not do everything for David. I'd got so used to doing everything. Mm-hmm. And they said you had to do things for yourself, didn't they? But unfortunately, 2 days before he came home, he was transferred to another ward because they needed the stroke bed ward. And that was
26.
It was grim, wasn't it?
Yeah, 3 days.
Yeah. I don't think they'd looked at his case notes or anything, and his arm was dangling, and they had him sitting on a hard chair, which he shouldn't have been. Bearing in mind he'd been sitting on a blown up chair before. My daughter went to visit him and started crying because you hadn't been shaved, had you? No. You know, I mean, they kept him lovely and clean on Ward 6.
They didn't have time.
They didn't have time because they had a lot of people with dementia, so it was very noisy. And then when he came to coming home, the day he should have come home, they said they couldn't discharge him because they hadn't got the physio notes. Well, we knew they had because the physios had told us. And it was actually the speech therapist who she kept ringing me up and saying, I'm on the case. So that was why he was late coming home. The medication was there. I don't know what happens, but I think they were just busy on that ward. And the total difference from the reception on the desk to right down, all the way through was just totally different. And we're just so glad we've been on Ward 6, where you got a smile. Everybody came and sang to you on your birthday, didn't they? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even the doctor came and sang, didn't he?
Yeah.
So that was just the downsides, and the getting home that took so long. But everything else was marvellous.
I'm feeling okay, far better than I ever thought I would do. I still things to do. What I can achieve then remains to be seen. But I shall keep on trying until I either do them or don't. I'm not there yet. I know that.